of Azerbaijan, sorry, and on the Coast Grand Prix. Today I will be joined very shortly by my co-commentator Tom, willing to risk it around this very new circuit built by, or designed by Herman Tilke, around the streets of Baku through long straights, called one of the longest straight in Formula One at the moment, and into the picturesque and beautiful castle section through the second sector. Of course, it's 6.003 km F1 calendar. The distance to turn one around 200 meters, so not the longest run down to turn one at all. So although it's a very long straight, the start finish line is right at the end, so the drivers will go right into that very sharp left hand turn at the end of the start finish line. That longest straight, however, is 2.1 kilometers. That's just over 1.3 miles on the approach to turn one. So the guys will get an absolute mighty tow coming out as we just quickly sit on board with Phil MCFC here, who had a bit of a torrid week last week in Austria. And his pace was very quick to start with, but he didn't have the most productive of race weekends when it came to the race itself. But will definitely be looking to stamp his authority in this final pre-season race before we head to Melbourne, Australia next week for the inaugural race of this F1 2018 Invictus Racing League No Assist Championship. Drivers will be doing a top speed of 230 miles an hour on their way down to turn one, which is the fastest the guys will do all season. So even faster than you'll get in Monza, which was typically the fastest straight line speed on the calendar. So 230 they will top out on. So it's that quick exit out of the final two corners, that ever so slight kink round to the right hand side, and then really launch it DRS aided all the way down to turn one. Drivers on full throttle for around 56% of the lap. Can range up to 60% depending on their gear ratio. So a lot of these guys here, as you see Phil just giving himself a little bit of space out on his outlap, ready to send it around the final few corners. It's quite a tricky complex of corners here coming out of the third sector. Very easy to run offline, collect the wall, and the drivers have to be really careful tonight to make sure they're keeping their cars out of danger. As you can see, the Sauber dryer launching that car down the straight, and the DRS does open just then as we got a yellow in sector 2, so perhaps a slow car in sector 2 has quickly disappeared. So Marshall's getting the flags in very quickly, so not going to hinder. As you see, Phil goes deep into turn one, and that's what all drivers will have to be careful with today. So going deep into turn one, unfortunately for Phil there, that's already ruined that lap, and our guys on the essentially burning out a set of tyres. He is out there on the ultra soft tyres, but I don't know if he's going to have the ability to kind of possibly trawl around and just set another time on those ultra soft tyres. We'll see if he's loaded up the car enough for that. We've got a yellow in sector 2 once again. We'll just quickly go through. It doesn't look like anyone. Now it is the castle section which Joel has just got through that will test out the drivers. He does look to cut the corner on the inside and the outside the corner there, so a bit of a rough start for Joel, who by the looks of it there, you can tell why. It doesn't look like that Ferrari has got a front wing at all, and it doesn't. So Joel V520, last year's runner-up in the championship, on his lap out already struggling with a contact with the walls. You see a Red Bull in the background there. It's Tony that's lost it coming out of the final, is in towards the final sector, and Tony just waiting there for the rest of the cars to move before he gets the car turned back around again. He doesn't want to get in the way, and unfortunately for Tony, he was static for too long, and it means that he's disqualified for the session. So really unfortunate there for Tony, who will be finding himself finishing and starting in 11th position. So the only upside there for Tony is he will get the opportunity to choose what tyres that he starts on. So whereas the rest of the drivers, as we see Delan also out as Delange also not completing a lap today, so he will retire. So Delange will be starting from 10th position. So Tony will start in 11th. Delange will start in 10th. We're on board with Speed Queen 80 here in the McLaren. And it'll be interesting to see Speed Queen, of course, finishing second last week, just behind Nikki 9095, who had a really good race, Nikki, to come and finish in first position. Speed Queen will be looking to up the pace this week and definitely stamp her authority back on the league. And evening, Rick, good to have you back in the stream. Good to have you watching again. Let us know if you want to see anything, if you want to hear anything, and if there's any comments you want to make, then feel free. Tom will be joining us very shortly, and we'll be able to get hashtag Ask Tom going on, and he'll be there to answer any questions when we got with strategy. As we're sitting here with Speed Queen, just watching her coming into the final section. She comes around this very, very fast kink leading onto the straight. Very easy to run wide and just clip the wall. She doesn't, keeps it nice and tight onto the straight. That launches that McLaren Renault down the straight under the Rolex banner. That DRS flap opens up, and it does. Now let's see, does she slow the car down enough to get into the first corner without breaking herself? It locks up a little bit, goes a little bit deep, but nicely held there from Speed Queen as she heads down into towards turn 2, locks up the front left, but just about gets the car straightened up. The DRS flap opens once again as she flies down towards turn 3. Very quick left hand corner there. Now, of course, Baku, a lot of 90-degree right hand and left hand turns at the start of the lap. Can catch the drivers out, and we'll see at the start of the race if they do manage to keep themselves away from each other. And we don't want to see any tangles, especially into this section that Speed Queen's coming up to now and towards the castle section. It's very, very sharp right hand corner into the left through the castle section. So tight here. You can only fit one car, you will not fit two through there. So Speed Queen pretty nicely at the moment, making her way round the Azerbaijan circuit, coming out full throttle, really getting it now. You've got to brake hard down for the left-hander, straighten the car up, launch it back down again on the brake markers, just run it in, kiss the apex of that corner on the inside, run out, just use the rumble strips on the outside, run it round the kink on the left. Lovely, nicely done, sweeping through the corners. And Speed Queen's going to fly down the main straight. DRS is going to open, and we'll see what she does initially. She's currently sitting on a 147.1. It's a long way down to that start finish line. That's a 139.782. So currently Speed Queen sitting in second position behind Tier 2 driver Scopefielder, who's put it on pole currently provisionally with a 139.215. So Scopefielder with the initial pace in the session, and it's for a tier 2 driver, as we've seen earlier, that Scopefielder definitely well up to the standard of these guys very early on in pre-season. And I believe it's time to welcome my co-commentator for this evening. So that is Tejua, or you'll know him as Tejua, I'll know him as Tom. So good evening, Tom. Nice to have you in the box.
Good evening, Gareth, and I tell you, getting through security is an absolute nightmare to get to this box. I had to show my pass 3 or 4 times and they still wouldn't let me in. Must be all that weight I've lost there. Yeah. Anyway, it's nice to be here. Scopefielder going fastest at the moment. As you can see, he's setting the marker down nice and early. Is he going to be a tier 1 driver or tier 2 driver in this championship? Time will only tell.
Absolutely, and with guys on the grid tonight, we're in store for an absolute barnstorm. We're with Sergeant 009 looking, after being very, very racy towards the end of the Austria race last week, and Sergeant possibly looking at doing the same once again. He had probably the best strategy last week when it came to running long on his first set of tyres and then coming in for his second stop, and towards the end just decided to come in. And Sergeant definitely was in within a shout of the win last week, however then dropped himself down to third. So Sergeant, a possible guy for the race win tonight.
Absolutely, he's no fool. He's been around for years. He knows what he's doing. He was setting the marker down. He's saying, look, I'm here, I'm quick enough, you know I'm quick enough, And that's, I think, when he pulled it in early, that was just him saying, that's enough fun for me. I found out what I needed to find out, so yeah, he's looking well for this season.
Just looking down, currently we've seen, not sure if you're aware, as you can see Tony Y and Delange both having retired early from the session, as Tony Y was disqualified on track in the third sector, was unfortunately spun coming out of turn 14 and 15, and unfortunately for him, he was static on track for about 5 seconds, which meant that he was disqualified from the session quite early on, so disappointing result there for Tony.
Yeah, absolutely. It could have been tactical. He might have been wanting the 11th place to start on the first tyres. As we know, there's the top 10 starting the qualifying tyre. It's quite quiet at the moment on track, as we can see Philip out on track currently as he's coming to the tight sector. You don't want to get 10 cars going through there at once, you'll end up with one coming through.
Just sitting on board Joel V520, he's put himself on pole currently with great lap there from Joel on the ultra soft tyres with 138.261 there, so absolutely cracking lap from Joel. Goes almost a second faster than Scopefielder, who I'm currently on board with here as he's coming down the final straight, down that long 1.3 mile long drag down into turn 1. It's all about these guys if they can get it slowed down for the first corner.
Absolutely, and I think there's a bit of gamesmanship by Joel there, because if you look at his ERS system, it is still quite full, so I imagine he might have just gone out on level 3, level 2 and set a little benchmark. I'm pretty sure he could probably go quicker, as we see Malk just leaving the pit lane.
Now, who would you put as your dark horse for this evening, Tom? Is there anyone particularly in the grid you feel might have been holding back ever so slightly last week in Austria, or anyone that you feel might potentially look to improve on how they did last week?
I'd have to say Joel and possibly Chill Nealand. They both jumped into the pits a bit early last week and left themselves with a bit of work to do. If I can recall, they lost, Chill Nealand lost his wing last week, so I think he could have been a lot closer to the front, so it's definitely going to be an interesting race. It'd be interesting as well to see Nicky and Sargent, Speed Queen and Sargent, obviously not too concerned with being at the front of the grid at the moment. I think they're just measuring the competition. So I'm expecting to see those two definitely come through. And Malk, it'd be nice to see Malk getting in the top 4, top 5, just to see what he can do in a bit of a pressure situation, because we didn't really get to see that last week. You know, as a driver of many years of experience, it'd be good to see him getting near the front.
Absolutely, Mount.
Spun. That spinner there, he just lets Malk through, very safe of himself to let oncoming driver through.
And Phil, of course, burned a set of tyres earlier on in the session. He just went deep into turn 1 on a set of ultra soft, so Phil not having the greatest of times out in qualifying at the moment, currently sitting in 8th with a low 2 minutes 6 at the moment, so hasn't really set a representative time. So Phil's definitely going to have to rush out and set this.
No, absolutely, Gareth, and I think also with Pat Vermeer off, I believe, he might just be testing his setup, because there's a fair few spins. You wonder if he's got a bit too much rear wing, and he could be looking to change that if he manages to get in and back out on time.
Yeah, you see they just waggled the car from side to side ever so slightly as he pulled it into the pit lane, so obviously frustrated with himself there. That's two times he's been out on a set of those purple ultra soft tyres, and he's yet to set a competitive time, so disappointing for Phil so far, but he's definitely one to look forward to in the race. He was pretty lightning fast in qualifying last week and just couldn't put it to race pace in the second session.
No, absolutely. I think Phil, he won't be too bothered about having the 2 minute 6 at the moment. We saw last week when he got pole position. He got a lightning start, like you said, Gareth, but he took it far too long on that first set, and by the time he came back out, he dropped down to 5th, 6th position, so he'll be looking to take the Sargent Speed Queen strategy this week, I believe, and look to pick up a couple of early places and try to get the pit stop sorted. It's very vital, well, for all leagues this season, to know that most races will be one stop, and it's a case of not taking your tyres right to the cliff. But something that I've noticed from experience as well is that once you're doing the one stop, you want to get the tyres overlap just right. If cars are still staying out and you can see the tyres are going off, that's when you want to make the call, because you know their tyres are going off, you're going to win the fresh set of tyres, air up the pump laps in, get your ERS in level 5, rich mix, and go for it, and get the undercut.
And we know just how powerful the undercut can be, especially in this game. It seems to be incredibly powerful, so the guys will be looking at utilising that as a strategy in the race. And how do you feel the guys will be setting up their cars tonight? Because it's very easy to want to put it with quite low downforce for this long straight and utilise a decent toe, but with a lot of short drags to right hand, left hand 90-degree corners, it's tricky for the guys to work out their setup balance.
Well, personally speaking, for myself, I'd probably go for a high front wing and a low rear wing, but then you'd have to try and correct all the kick-outs it'll get, because there's a lot of 90-degree corners, a lot of windy corners. You want to get the front end pointing in quickly. You don't want to be steering a boat into these corners, especially the tight castle section. You want to be able to go through there as fast as possible. My personal preference, as it always has been, I like a lot of downforce. A little bit of the steer doesn't really bother me. I can always try and correct it, but as long as I can get my front end in, that's the kind of setup I prefer. I think if you look at Joel on his lap, Joel's got a very good pointy end. He's pointed it into the corners and he's making it stick. So I imagine Joel might be running probably a little bit more higher wing than the others. I'm not too sure on his straight line speed as a ranking between out of the top 11 in qualifying, because obviously we don't get to see that information. But I'd imagine that's the setup he'll be using.
Yes, he's looking to come across the line now and set another fastest time on a super soft tyres. And does he go any quicker? He doesn't. It's almost a second slower on that time. So Joel possibly making a mistake earlier on in the lap. Currently still sitting top of the standings with that 1:38.2. So still within, or still almost a second ahead of everyone else. So still waiting to see.
Another quick one though, Gareth. I think with the super soft tyres, I think as Craig alluded to last week, you got to warm them up. Now they come good at possibly a second, third lap later. So it'd be interesting. I'm not too sure from the times if he's really on one, but it looks like it from his onboard. It looks like he's pushing.
Yeah, as he goes.
An indicator of that would probably be a lock-up if he locks up anywhere. See if he locks up at the end of the straight, because he still has his ERS on level 5. Hard braking, getting the charge up. A little lock-up inside right. Could that be a tell that he is on a qualifying lap? I'm sure we'll find out as he goes through the castle section. Get up to 6th gear, drop down to 4th, I believe, as he comes to this section. The tight left-hander, it's quite deceiving this corner because you can very easily put it into the wall. Yeah, that Ferrari looks like it's handling well, it's sticking to the track very well. Pointing into the corners, kisses the apex on the exit, and now he's in the long straight.
He's currently 0.4 of a second down on his fastest time. Of course, he's on those slightly worn super soft tyres there, so possibly not going to improve his time at the moment. So we'll see, does he stick with the lap or does he bail out? He's coming up to the pit lane and it looks like he's going to bail out that one. So Joel deciding with 5 seconds left in the session that this is all he can do.
Oh, I think Scottfield could be about to grab pole position. As he comes, 135, 136, 137. Oh, it's still P2 down by 2 cents. Anybody else on a quick lap? Sargent is 3.9 down on his fastest lap, so we'll leave him. We'll go and see what else we get. Nicky, 1.1 second up at the moment. As he just leaves the first sector, comes into the second sector.
It's only Nicky at the moment on track that's going quick enough to attack, and Sargent of course going slower. Speed Queen's not going any quicker. She didn't participate. She only put a 1:39.7 in. Chiln Island with a 1:39.5 is currently sitting in 5th place. So it's Nicky coming through the castle section at the moment. Nice and neat through there, not looking fast, and then it's a slow exit. So possibly, yeah, Nicky or not on full throttle at all, sitting in 6th gear. So yeah, coasting around Nicky. So it looks like that might be the session wrapped up with Joel taking pole position for the race.
Yeah, I think Nicky obviously might have took a bit too much out of his tyres. I think it's the second fast lap in these tyres, so still a very comfortable qualifying session for Nicky, finishing in P4. Sargent in P3, so it's going to be a very interesting first corner. It's quite a short squirt out the first corner. It's when you get down the full lap and you've got the long straight, which you could be looking at 2 in a bed, 3 in a bed.
And of course, with that long DRS down the main straight from turn 20 all the way down to turn 1. It really sets you up for a decent attack at the car in front heading into the first and second corners, and if you can utilise that speed, that's that DRS down from turn through to turn 3, that can help you pull away ever so slightly. So the speed these guys take into turn 1 will be crucial for the racecraft.
Absolutely. Absolutely crucial, especially with it being a street circuit. It's quite a wide street circuit, and I say that in the terms of the fact that you can overtake, you can get a bit overcautious, but also you don't want to be pushing it too much, especially if you're the defending and you're on the outside. You want to give each other just the right amount of room.
Absolutely. So you can see their results for qualifying. Joel V520 takes pole position in the Ferrari with 138.261. He's followed by Scopefield, the tier 2 driver in the Toro Rosso with 138.4. Sergeant 009 puts his Williams on third, with Nikki 9095, last week's winner, in fourth. Jill Nyland in the second. Force India comes in fifth, with Speed Queen 80 down in sixth position. So let's see her charge from the midfield. Malk's currently sitting in seventh, and from then I think we had the retirees of SJD, Phil, Tony, and there's one more that I just missed. It was Delange, there we go, sorry. So yeah, Tony and Delange will start 11th and 10th, and SJD will finish down in 9th position, I believe.
Is it not Delanga or Delange or Delange?
I want to say it's probably Delanga, but yeah. we'll have to find out from Mark himself what he prefers to be called.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to call Chill Nealand the way Craig calls him, so it's going to be Chill Nealand tonight.
So,
I hope he's not watching the stream.
Oh, I'm sure you'll see him commenting if he is. So, how are you with seeing the qualifying results? What are we thinking is going to happen, especially in the first corner? Are we seeing any attacks from Scopefielder down into turn 1, or Joel? Is the runner-up from last season going to look to stretch a lead out earlier in the race?
I think Scopefielder will go for it at the start. I don't think the rest will. I think if the rest get away well, I think they'll go into single file just to get it to the long straight after the second corner, the second left-hander, sorry. Then you could see a couple of position changes in the slipstream, open the door, and you see some clean overtakes before the corner.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and it's a circuit that I feel it doesn't really open itself up to too much overtaking. It's only really the first sector that kind of allows you the gap to go down the inside with DRS. As soon as you hit towards the castle section and onwards, it's such fast sweeping corners and very sharp braking zones that it's very tricky to get close to anyone in front of you.
Absolutely. You know what the thing is with this track, I don't know if you've experienced it or others have, is I can never find a rhythm on it. It's always a case of, you look at the calendar, you see Baku, and it's like, oh god, you know it's going to be one of those where you're quite happy just to take a point. Because for me, I can never find a rhythm with it. I'm always looking at corner to corner to corner rather than drinking this lap, next lap, find a window, that lap. You know, that's probably a bit like my way of thinking when I'm racing. I'm always thinking what lap, because I've been in a rhythm. But now, with this circuit, it's not ideal. Each to their own. I hope they put on a great spectacle, but to me it's an awkward circuit for myself.
Yeah, absolutely. Of course, it's one of the Herman Tilke circuits, so he always puts his special how do I say?
On the
yes,
circuit.
Exactly. But yeah, so as the drivers slowly start to get ready for the session, I do find it to be quite a tricky circuit. It's the castle section indeed, and turn 15, that break just before you launch yourself towards the straight, I find can be very, very hard, lap upon lap, just ever so slightly you need to brake bang on the same marks almost every single lap, because especially going through the left-hand turn into the castle section, it's so easy with these wide rear-ended cars now just to clip a rear wheel on the inside of the castle section, and effectively that if you do that when you're ahead of a train of about 3 or 4 cars, I think you'll find yourself causing a little bit of bother for the guys behind, and possibly not being the most popular guy in the paddock after the race. Yeah,
it probably won't be like that this week. I think it'll be a case of, it's obviously the last pre-season race, and I think people will be wanting to leave a stamp on the race and a bit of a longing effect, which people will, you know, if somebody wants to make a marker for next week, I'm pretty sure they'll go for it. But as far as thinking too much with regards to this race, I don't think there will be.
No, we'll see. It'll be interesting to see if I believe the safety car is on for this. Whether we do see a potential safety car today, it's probably the most likely one on the F1 calendar that we've got this season, whether it be pre-season or during the actual season itself, that we would see it, because with such a tight winding circuit, the chances for collisions and the chances for a little, especially these guys that are maybe not used to the circuit as much as possible, accidents do happen as we go green for the formation lap.
Yeah, it's vital this lap now, especially in this version of the game, to get the tyres warmed up. You won't want to hit anybody on this out lap, and I'm pretty sure they were taking this as race conditions, if you will, for the season. You can see Joe making sure he's up to softs and warmed up. Schofield there, keeping him in company, keeping him honest.
So Tony Y, who didn't set a lap and of course finishes or starts outside of the top 10, had the option of choosing whatever he went on to. He's going to start on a set of fresh super softs here, so possibly not looking to go long and using the soft tyres, and possibly looking at doing a more aggressive strategy today.
Possibly, but then you have to think that his tyres will be fresher than those who did do a time lap on the super softs. I believe I'm not really that familiar with Tony's pace as such, but if he was a racer now, you'd be thinking get rid of Delange, get rid of SJD, target Phil, and then take the race from there, because if you can stay out longer, you've got about 2 or 3 laps in the bag with the tyres as the condition is yet. It's just a case of trying to keep out of the dirty air, keeping the tyres fresh, and letting the race open up. Sometimes it can be a good advantage starting at the back. I remember when I won my first ever race, which was only a few years ago. I started in 14th. I had the harder tyre on, bit of mayhem at the first corner, managed to jump up to 9th, and from there I just picked off every position. If we've got a spinner, that's the Red Bull of Tony. So there goes my fury out the window. He's knackered his tyres up, he hasn't even done one lap yet.
Just keeping Christian Horner and that Red Bull team on their toes in the pit lane, making sure that they're ready for every eventuality, and possibly it will just hold Joel at the front and he'll be sitting. If Tony's kind of languishing at the back, it'll mean that Ferrari will be sitting on the grid a few seconds longer. That engine just ticking over, getting hotter and hotter. So not what the Ferrari driver will want to see at all.
No, absolutely, especially since those teams wanted to start on the Inters. It's quite a bizarre call from the Ferrari team there, but Joe insisted, no, these tyres are fine, it won't rain.
So Joel just coming down the straight now, just ever so slowly weaving side to side as the engineers making sure the radio is definitely working, making sure they've got all the right settings ready to get that car to launch off the line properly as he lines up in the pole position grid slot, and Scopefielder just peels to the inside, has the inside line, a slightly dirtier line, but it's going to be Joel that will lead us away after the 5 red lights. As you see, they are starting to come up on line now. So we have 1 light, 2 light, 3 lights, 4 lights, 5 lights, and they are being held, and we are go in Azerbaijan as Joel gets a good start, but Scopefielder doesn't look to attack me. Scope also coming into attack from
Mercedes on the outside, the Williams on the outside, the Sargent jumps onto speed 2. Scopefielder's had a bad start, he jumps down to 4th, and we've had a spinner, have we? No, is it just Speed Queen and Malk both going off as Joel gets a magnificent start, reminiscent of Phil's last week as Sargent. He has Till Nearland in his slipstream as we go down to turn 3. Turn 3.
And the guys all pretty cleanly making their way through the first sector at the moment. We haven't seen too much going on. Luckily, it's Nicky 9095. Unfortunately, he's not had the best of starts because dropped down behind Speed Queen 80, who just about got that McLaren up the inside going into turn 2. It looked like their guys were going very close, but we come now towards the castle section for the first time. We'll see if everyone gets through cleanly.
dream started for Delange. He's up into 8th place as he now comes through the castle section. The Toro Rosso keeps the front end nice and tidy, no clipping of the castle there. And we see he's coming up close behind Nicky. Nicky's dropped down 3 places. It'd be interesting now as Scottfield is on the back of Phil. Scottfield, he will be fuming to lose 3 places off the start. And there's a bit of front wing end plate that's come off the Force India. I believe it was Chill Nearland. So like last week, he's lost a part of his wing in the early going. And here we go. I'll let you call this, Gareth, as we go down the main straight.
Yeah, so Scopefield are going to be tucked right into the rear end, and as you see, the Chill Nyland really struggling with the downforce of that Forndia, which does have missing front right end plate, and Phil gets past and Scopefield follows him through. He's going to be tucked in right into the back of that Saab, pulls to the outside, and he's going to be followed by Speed Queen 80 as they go down to turn 1. Scope's going to have to watch out in front and as well behind us. We've lost Phil. So Phil, as he did in qualifying, misses his braking point going into turn 1.
A disaster. He comes back on in front of Tony. Oh no. Phil Ericsson.
It's a real shame for Phil there, who made an absolutely brilliant start, moved up 4 positions up into 4th or into 3rd position after overtaking Chill Island, but really unfortunate there for Phil. He drops down to 10th position.
Commiserations for Phil, but celebrations for Delange as he has moved up 4 positions and he's coming up to the back of Nicky in the Force India. Delange on the fresher super soft tyres, Nicky on the ultra soft, so if he keeps it going the way it is, he will be catching the back of that Force India as the Force India locks up coming into the castle section.
As Speed Queen 80 ever so slightly closing up to the rear end of Scope. Scope gets a much better run through the castle section than the McLaren driver, and Speed Queen now starting to fall back a little bit. Was the point where the gap was just over half a second. It's now down to 1.1, and it's meant that Nicky 9095 is starting to look at the rear end of that McLaren, and we know although Speed Queen has definitely got the paces, Phil unfortunately retires from the session. So really unfortunate there for Phil, who had started the race absolutely brilliantly, and unfortunately for him, with so much speed that he caught off the rear end of Chill Nyland's Force India, just couldn't get the car slowed down for turn 1.
Absolutely heartbreaking for Phil. A second retirement in pre-season. Hopefully he won't take that mindset into the season start next week. He's a strong character and I'm sure he'll be looking to bounce back when the real stuff gets going. As we have Malk defending from SJD. Is SJD going to phone it inside? No, he doesn't feel confident enough at this point. As he runs a little bit wide, trying to keep it to the back of that Ferrari. As we go down turn 2, Malk taking a nice line through turn 2. SJD looks close there. 7 tenths, 6 tenths, the gap's getting smaller as he gets sucked into the back of that Ferrari. Is he going to be close enough at this point? No, he is not. He'll have to wait till the next section. His mouth kisses the wall. Nice smooch with the Fly Emirates sign there.
Yeah, the Renault all over the back of Smauk, who gets a real kick of the rear end out coming out of turn 4 there, and it's allowed the Renault to close right up, and Malk is all over the place, and he's lost the rear end coming out of turn 6 there, and unfortunately for Malk, that means that SJD gets a free pass past the Ferrari team, and that puts him into clear air.
Yeah, he was struggling through all the corners there. I would use the term tank slapper, but I think he's getting tank punches. That car was flying everywhere at the back of it. So I wonder if he's trying the low rear downforce. As you can see again, he's spun again. Yeah, putting a show on for the spectators there. Doing a semi-donut as Tony catches up to him now. Tony going about his business. He's made up 2 places. And the real battles now could be Sargent and Joel, as Sargent has broken the 1 second barrier. You'll have DRS going down the straight and he might not get close enough. Gapped out to 8 tenths, Scope just 1.1 behind him outside of the DRS. Sargent down to 6 tenths behind. Interesting to see as he locks up there into the first corner, but it takes him closer to the Ferrari. It's now down to 5 tenths. He'll be looking to have a little nibble down the end of the straight, I believe, if he gets DRS assisted. Let's have a look. Yeah. As the rear wing flap is open, here we go, we could have a change of the lead. On lap 4, Joe might have to go into defensive mode. No, there's not enough power in the back of that Williams. I wonder what engine settings he's using. I think I'll have to look at that now. No, Sargent currently charging the engines at level 1, Joel defensive, level 5. Interesting insight into both drivers here. Sargent will be charging his battery up. doesn't look like he's losing too much ground though, even though he's charging. Yellow flag out in sector 3 as Channel Leland pits again.
Now it does look like Joel may be slowing the pack down at the moment, because Scopefielder, Speed Queen and Nikki are all coming into a attacking point of each other at the moment, and Scope, definitely the tier 2 driver, managing to hold with the top 2 at the moment and not being under too much threat from Speed Queen behind. So Scope definitely holding his own at the start of this race.
Yeah, I think Joel's tyres might be going off a bit there. I think he's on the ultra softs, as Sargent's on the super soft. It's not unfamiliar to see drivers in the tighter section turn the engine down and back the pack up, so you know they're going to get attacked again. Because this will be where Joel will be looking to open up as he kisses the wall on the way out of the corner there. Sargent, is he going to send him around the outside? Or, oh, bit of weaving, unfortunately there, but they're nowhere near the braking zone as of yet. Sargent goes through into P1 before the corner. Joel comes right under him. He's going to go back up the inside. Oh, he thinks better of it as he is there.
I think that was looking like it was slightly inevitable by the end, as Joel just looked like he was losing pace on those ultra soft tyres, and we'll see if Scope, who's also on those ultra soft tyres, is going to start to come under threat, as Speed Queen now 4/10 of a second behind the Toro Rosso driver, heading down into turn 3.
Oh, a day shot on $1 early. Through that corner there. And Joel hits the wall again. I wonder if his tyres are starting to go off. They must be. We'll have a familiar story of Sargent and Speed Queen soon though, as Speed Queen on the back of Scopefielder.
Tony White picks up a 5-second stop go for speeding in the pit lane. Very easy to do at this circuit. You come off that long straight into the pit lane. Or as you see, Scopefielder just tags the rear end of his car against the wall, heading out through the castle section there. So Scope starting to struggle on these ultra soft tyres as well.
Absolutely, Gareth. I think this is where the race is going to be now. I think you've got the top 6. So the top 6. I'm going to say the top 6. You've got Sargent, you've got Joe, you've got Scope, you've got Speed Queen, you've got Nikki, and you've got Delanga on the super softs. Should really rule out SJDs also on the super softs, but it'll be interesting to see how this race opens up from now. We could possibly be coming to the pit window soon for a 2-stopper if you're brave enough. You can also be seeing the pit window open up for the ultra softs.
Scopefielder hits the wall heading out of turn 20, that into the right hand turn, and just got a huge snap of oversteer and just put his right hand tyre into the wall.
Visual safety car's out and Joel jumped into the pits. He's the only one to do so. Very clever from Joel. He obviously knew he needed the pits soon, so he's taken the opportunity to have a free pit stop. His team will be looking to fly him out there as soon as they can, so he can get up to speed while the others are still going around quite slow. As you look at Joel, he's come out of the pits and he's going to be 4 seconds off SJD, possibly a little bit more. Clever pit stop from the Ferrari guys. Very clever pit stop from the Ferrari guys, as he's only 20 seconds off the lead at the moment. Now they're all going for DRS, virtual safety car speed. Hopefully the safety car will be done, as Malk has been caught doing 35 in a 30 zone.
It's strange to see the Ferrari boys making the right strategy call at the moment, and so pulling in Joel just at the right time and calling him in. It couldn't have been any later. It must have been as he was coming up to the pit lane exit that VSC came out. So perfect timing for the Ferrari team there to pull Joel in, and it must be counting his lucky stars there, because he was really starting to struggle on those ultra soft tyres.
Absolutely no clown spec pit stop from Ferrari this week, but this has opened up a brilliant potential race between 2 championship contenders, as we're currently on board with a helicopter camera, as Speed Queen is 1.5 seconds ahead of Sargent, both from what appear to be the quicker tyres at the moment. This will be an interesting game of chess for the rest of this race with 20 laps to go. Unfortunately, Scopefield has also left us now, which is a shame because he was running quite well in 4th place. Delanga has made up 6 places, looking very solid at the moment. Solid if unspectacular, as he's still within 10 seconds of the lead, so well done to him. And Nikki is still hanging in there, and only plus 3 seconds down from Speed Queen. So as we see now, Speed Queen starting to catch Sargent, so this is an interesting phase of the race now, and it could come to life in the next 5 to 6 laps.
Just want to highlight SJD in the Renault, currently sitting in 5th position as well. A Tier 2 driver that's new to the no assist. He's doing very nicely for himself currently. As I say that, Joel makes the move past him up into 5th position. But it's SJD doing quite nicely, joining the league quite late on, but sitting ahead of Malk, sitting ahead of Chiln Island, and so it's good to see these guys slowly bedding themselves into the league.
No, absolutely, and he's a great addition to the league as well. I spoke to him previously when he was briefly a member of the Formula 3 grid and the performance, and he wanted to learn no assist. He wanted to get to the basics of being a no assist racer, so full credit to him, and he's bearing the fruits now of all the effort he's put into becoming a no assist driver.
As Speed Queen now gets within that 1 second window of Sergeant 009 in the lead of the race, and is she gonna get... She is within that 1 second DRS window, heading down onto the main straight as Malk picks up another penalty for crossing the pit lane while crossing the pit lane exit line on exits. So a bit of a scruffy wrap.
Fox, if you look at his ERS, he's still got 40% ERS compared to Speed Queen, who's now gone flat. So Sergeant letting Speed Queen catch up, but he's keeping his ERS still very high up. As you can see now, Speed Queen's had to drop down to 2, and Sergeant's currently running in 3. So, and Malk's had a spin again. Another donut for the crowd here in Baku.
As Nicky 9095 makes his first stop out of 5th place at the moment. So Nicky coming into the pits for his stop as SJD also joins him in the pit lane.
Interesting time to pit for Nicky. I'm sure there'll be many viewers in the other leagues watching this as Nicky comes onto the super soft tyres. You'll be expecting to do 18 laps on them, so a lot of eagle-eye viewers will be watching the times. Especially to see if they can get the undercut now.
Talking about other viewers, hello Fascone, good to have you in the league or in the viewing party tonight. Feel free to let us know if you want to see anything or if you've got anything to say to Tom or myself. It's always good to have you in.
Any questions? Obviously, as always, hashtag Ask Stiffy.
Absolutely, as Chiln Island sets that 1:43.1, the fastest lap of the race so far on the super soft tyres in the Force India. We're still on board with Speed Queen as she still follows the rear end of Sergeant 009's Williams, and it's going to be...
I think Sergeant might pit this lap. That's just my possibly as a racer. That's what I'm thinking now. The tyres are getting to that point where they're... No, he's not. He stays out. I'd be thinking now the tyres are getting to the point where they're performing well. Could be coming up the cliff soon. Yeah, he could still go for the undercut, even though it's not an undercut, if you know what I mean. But he is way of taking the race to Nicky, to Speed Queen, because at the moment in the position he's in, if you were Speed Queen, you're thinking maybe I should pit, put a fast lap in and go for track position. But Sergeant, the racer that he is, it won't surprise me if he's thinking the same thing. Take the race to Speed Queen before Speed Queen takes the race to him.
Yeah, Speed Queen losing a fraction of a second there, just kicking the rear end out coming out of turn 1, so possibly lost herself around 2 or 3 tenths of a second. And as Cofielder says, well, that wasn't my greatest, one of my greatest races. I tend to. It was Cofielder. You're actually running very nicely earlier in the race. It's just an unfortunate mistake, but
no, absolutely,
it's definitely something.
It's a shame because we're looking forward to seeing how Scottfielder's race opened up. Looks like we're going to be in there. It was unfortunate because, you know, I know Joel's pitting now, so we can't rule him out, but his tyres might be getting a bit worn now. It's a shame that Scottfielder retired because it looked like it could have been a 4-horse race at the front, and obviously now we could just be down to 2, possibly 3.
Absolutely, but this is the battle that we've been waiting to see over pre-season of Speed Queen 80 versus Sergeant 009, and we know just how quick these are.
Sergeant's got all the answers in his pocket at the moment. He's been consistent with his laps. He's still got a lot of VRS to go, and he's on level 3. You don't want to get into the back of Malco. Safety car could be called there. But if you look at Nicky is consistently at the bottom of the... Is Nicky going to pit here? It looks like slowing down for a pit stop. No, they both at Speed Queen, sorry. If you look at Speed Queen's ERS, it's consistently low, trying to keep up with Sergeant. So Sergeant, obviously, with the cards in his pocket at the moment.
Sargent just moving side to side down the long straight, just making sure he breaks that toe ever so slightly on Speed Queen without losing too much straight line speed. We know just how powerful the toe and the DRS is down the Baku long straight, the longest straight of the F1 calendar, and just wants to keep that McLaren at arm's length behind him.
Yeah, absolutely. It's also nice to see Joel bringing himself back into play here. 16 seconds off the lead at the moment, so once the top three do pit, which they eventually will, just a case of will they go for the faster tyres though, or will they go for the harder compound? The way they're going at the moment, they're probably just nursing the tyres, and you could see a late change to the ultra softs. Maybe not, but like I say, I definitely think with the front two, it's just a game of chess at the moment. You know, trying to see who acts first. And the gap has slowly creeped its way back up to 2 seconds, as we say. Sargent with a full bag of ERS to use. Speed Queen charging at the ERS, so that's possibly why the gap has opened up as much as it has this lap. And what I must say is, what a fantastic drive from DeLange as he kisses the wall there. He's currently racing third, started in 10th, very solid race from DeLange. He could be having the attentions of Joel any second now. As Joel, who did the fastest lap previously, has now got the gap down to 2.1.
And Speed Queen comes in, so it's going to be Speed Queen that's going to look at the undercut.
Yeah, and I'll have to hazard a guess now. I think it's probably for the harder tyre. It's going to be the softs going on. Is it the medium? No, it'll probably be the softs.
It's a long trundle down, so...
Yeah. It's a set of ultra softs. Is it ultra softs? I can't tell. It went soft and ultra softs.
It looks like another set of super softs to me. So it's another set of the supers for Speed Queen, who so it's
yeah, bit of an experiment there from Speed Queen Gareth, possibly going for the two stop. No choice now.
Yeah, as Fast Going says, good to see Sarge and Speed Queen back in at Invictus, and it's true. We definitely did miss them last season. It's great to have them back in the No Assist League. They are well liked in the community and an absolute joy to watch when it comes to battling on the track.
Absolutely. When you think of the No Assist League and Invictus, yeah, two names that automatically pop into your head. And selfishly, we possibly do at times talk about them a little bit too much, but when they do get going, wheel-to-wheel tangling, it's definitely one of the finest spectacles in Invictus that we have here.
Absolutely, but in their absence last season, it was Joel who started to really make inroads in the Low Assist Championship, and he's looking to make inroads on the podium positions this race, as he's really starting to look at the back of DeLange in second place at the moment. DeLange starting to look like his older super soft tyres might succumb to the Ferrari power behind. He's going to have DRS, and it looks like this might be a bit of a foregone conclusion down the main straight past the pit.
Is he put in? No, yes, he is. He's put in.
So that frees up Joel, who takes the lead because Sargent comes in and makes his stop, but Sargent goes on to the soft compounder tyre. So we'll see, does Speed Queen get him on the exit? It's going to be close. Sargent just maintains his position on track ahead of Speed Queen, so the undercut there just wasn't quite powerful enough. He possibly needed, or she possibly needed one more lap just to utilise those super soft tyres, but she will have the advantage on Sargent with the super soft for the next few laps whilst they're in their prime. But it's interesting to see the different, well, essentially Speed Queen needs to get past and make a break for it, seeing as it looks like Sargent might be going to the end.
Yeah, it's a bit of a shame that, really. I mean, in hindsight, you'd have made Speed Queen go onto the softs. You could have had him a little bit of a ding-dong now, but Sargent's got track position, he's got the harder tyres, and he'll be making that Williams as wide as possible, I imagine, because Speed Queen, to make a fist of this race now, needs to get ahead of him and try to open up a gap worthy of being the equivalent of a pit stop. And we can always have a safety car, or virtual, of course, but and the race at the moment with 40 laps to go, this is looking at the way it is. It's got Joel, who inevitably, possibly will be stopping again, I have to imagine, and Sargent on the softs. It could be another strong race for Sargent. He obviously went one lap short from winning the race last week. And Speed Queen in the DRS. Let's have a look now as they go down to turn 1. Speed Queen in overtake in the DRS. Sergeant in fast, level 5 DRS. Speed Queen DRS is open. Is the gap there? No, just a little bit too short. The fastest lap of the race goes to Speed Queen.
Speed Queen really tucked in the gearbox of that Williams in front as they head out turn 2, down the DRS straight down into turn 3. She needs to get this move done going into turn 3. DRS wide open. She pulls to the inside. Does she get the move down the inside? No, she doesn't. Doesn't want to throw it down the inside. Doesn't want to risk it, but she needs to get this move done pretty snappy if she wants to start stretching out a lead ahead of Sarge.
No, absolutely. She's shown Sargent a lot of respect there in both corners. Could have gone for the move. I like to think quite a majority of drivers would have gone for the move, especially the second opportunity arose. So, obviously, a lot of respect between the two drivers being shown here.
As we lose Tony in Sector 3, so unfortunate for Tony, who joins the growing list of retirees from today's race. Of course, a very, very tricky circuit for the drivers to keep on the black stuff and out of the walls, and unfortunately, it looks like Tony may have joined them in the paddock and in the pit lane early.
Shame for Tony there, but from the way he was driving early on in the race, it was inevitable. He seemed quite happy to be scraping the wall, obviously testing the limits of his car. We look forward to seeing him back next week in Australia, probably put on a great show as well as the other drivers.
Yeah, of course, we start our season next week in Melbourne, Australia. Another street circuit, but slightly more or less conventional street circuit. A lot more runoff areas and gravel areas compared to these tight, twisty conventional street circuits. As Sargent locks up into turn 1, that's really let Speed Queen close up to the rear end of him, and she's going to have another opportunity if she can get a good run out of turn 2 up and through the DRS into turn 3. And we'll see if Speed Queen can get the move done. That DRS is wide open. She did pull out of the move last lap. She pulls out once again, but once again she just doesn't have enough room to send it down the inside.
No, the longer she stays behind Sargent, the more worn her tyres are going to get, and as Chill Nealand makes the retirement number 5. We are now down to the final 6. This has turned into a bit of a Royal Rumble of a race at present. Every man for himself.
Absolutely. As what will be interesting now is that Sargent and Speed Queen are starting to close up to the rear end of Joel V520 in first position. So potentially we could see almost a scenario where Joel's going to be holding up once again. So this might play into Speed Queen's hands.
Hopefully it will do, because for the sake of the race, I'd like to see Speed Queen possibly get ahead of Sargent and try and open up a gap, because it could play out quite well this now. If Speed Queen goes into the pits and goes on the ultra softs, gets ahead of Sargent now at this point, you'd have to could be a couple of seconds in there, and comes out on the fresher tyres and Sargent's on the harder, more worn tyres. We could be in for a fascinating finish. It just depends if Speed Queen gets through here, which I think she will. I think this is where it is. I think it's going to be the change for P2.
Yeah,
right in the slipstream, Sargent goes defensive. On the outside.
Definitely much closer this lap, and it's going to be, they go side by side down into turn 1. Oh, Sargent, they kiss ever so slightly. Both wheels just tapping each other, but Sarge just about keeping his Williams in a straight line, but Speed Queen does get the move done down into turn 1. So now it's a case of Speed Queen needs to get a move on. She needs to really, really get the hammer down, get past Joel as soon as possible, and hope that Joel holds up Sarge a little bit.
Absolutely fantastic move. It's been quite quiet recently, but that's a fantastic move. Give each other a tolerance no thicker than a piece of paper. Great racing by both drivers.
And I think we might be seeing essentially 1, 2, 3 of the drivers that will be battling for the title this season. And we know that Sarge and Speed Queen will be up there, but Joel definitely in with a shout. He definitely showed last season that he was the man on form come the end of the season, finishing on the podium every race of the last 6. So he's definitely got the pace.
Absolutely, Gareth, and I've got to say that for Joel's sake, of possibly not having the same performance as Speed Queen the Sergeant in the race, he'll have to be thinking a lot more about his strategy. He'll have to think about other ways to take the fight to both of them. Such as now, even though he came in early, he's got track position, he's bearing fruits at the moment. Let's see if he does try to put up a defence against Speed Queen. He'll obviously benefit himself from the long run because he'll obviously be stopping again, going on to the ultra soft. So it's fascinating to see what happens in these last 11 laps if the final 6 drivers make it to the end.
And what I think is interesting also is Nicky 9095 in 4th position, slowly starting to catch up to the back of the leading 3 at the moment. So Nicky definitely not out of this.
Absolutely not. No, it's very vital though for Nicky now to get the move on Sargent, because Sargent, as we know, could potentially be going to the end, and Nicky possibly might have to stop. It depends. I'm not really too sure. Can you get 18 laps out of the super softs? Questionable. You know, if that is the case, your tyres are going to go off and the softs are going to bear fruit for Sargent. I'm gonna have to imagine that a second stop is going to be possible for Joel, Speed Queen and Nicky. So for their sake, it's vital that Nicky gets out ahead of Sargent now.
Yeah, Joel seemingly starting to spin those rear tyres, exiting slower corners already, so Speed Queen's right up to the gearbox of the Ferrari, so this is really Speed Queen's opportunity of getting past Joel, starting to struggle on slightly worn super soft tyres. Speed Queen on much fresher tyres. It's now or never really if she gets the move done and starts to make a breakaway.
Yeah, but not just for that as well, Gareth. You got Delange who's only 15 seconds behind, so you have to imagine that if they do stop again, Delange on the softer tyre, he won't need to stop and he'll inherit those positions. So the race potentially coming alive from lap 22, lap 23. Let's sit back and enjoy the race as it unfolds in front of us.
Absolutely, and with 10 laps left to go, we're definitely in store. Still some more overtaking, some more strategy calls within the race. So it's not over yet as Joel comes in for his second stop. So that releases Speed Queen.
Very well timed there from Joel. You don't want to lose any time squabbling over P1. If anything, it would have costed both of them. So Speed Queen will obviously be relieved as well. Will feel relieved about that as well, as the gap to Sargent is now 2.1. The shackles have been taken off. But Speed Queen once again struggling with the ERS levels, right down into the medium setting with not a lot of battery. So that'll be one to watch as the season unfolds. Just watching the drivers get used to how to use the ERS and in the most consistent of way. The one driver I have been impressed with the use of the ERS so far is in Sargent. It's constantly in the 50% halfway mark of the ERS. If he wants to use it, he's got it in his pocket. If he doesn't need it, he won't use it.
Absolutely, and although he might need to use it going down the straight this lap, as Nicky's all over the back of the Williams going through the castle section at the moment. Nicky closed right up using the second DRS straight between turn 2 and turn 3, and he's lost a little bit of time coming out of the castle section, but the Force India driver looking very racy behind the Williams coming into the third sector.
Absolutely, it'd be vital now for Nicky to try and at least get down to 6 tenths, because he's got the ERS fully charged. So ERS, Nicky will be ready to unleash the ERS down the straight. The gap's down to 6 tenths. Let's have a look at 7 now. Let's have a look on the end of the straight. Let's see how fast that Mercedes is in a fast line, in a fast straight. We're going out as Sargent goes against the wall, taking the inside line. Nicky might run out of track at the moment. At the moment, run out of track.
Oh, it's going to be a deep lunge.
Contact. Oh, there was contact. Not a lot of respect.
Oh,
Sargent comes back and oh no.
And it ends in tears.
It does, potentially for both drivers, because that race is now going to open up for Speed Queen. You have to hazard. Well, you'd have to hazard a guess. We'll be able to build up a gap now, and yeah, I think a little bit of over eagerness from Nicky, especially with it being pre-season. I think that probably would have took Sargent by surprise, and I don't think it was completely needed. We'll have to have a look at the replays. That, as we see Nicky now hitting the wall again, just try to log any damage. Yeah, the front right end plate of that Force India's come off as Sargent goes past. Sargent go past now?
Yeah, so
oh, they're all going slow. Is there a virtual safety car? They're all going rather slow.
Sargent, I think, has a bit of an issue with Nicky's not going past. I think Nicky's slowed down, trying to let past Sargent, is oversteered coming out of turn 6 and really hit the wall and taken the rest of that front wing off. So Sargent, you could see when he went deep into turn 2 with the two having contact, he was shaking the wheel from side to side. So obviously very, very visibly upset with what happened with Nicky going into turn 1. Possibly not particularly impressed with that quite late lunge from the Racing Point Force India driver.
Absolutely, and there'll be no flapjack being passed to the Force India garage from Claire Williams this evening. A very animated Williams pit wall at the moment. There was no need for that. There's no need for the throw at the inside. There was still plenty of laps to go. A bit disappointing, especially with it being pre-season. Sargent has every right to be upset, and for those racing and for those watching, it's an example of when to go for the move and when not to go for the move, because in that instant all the effort you put into the race could just come apart. As we see Nicky pitting, is Sargent going to pit? Sargent will pit as well. No, it's a shame, especially for the spectators and the viewers, that it's happened, because the race was beginning to really open up. Depends now if Speed Queen chooses to pit again like Joel. Well, the gap's 15.5, so we'll have to watch these two now to see if the end of the action, but I'll let you call it, Gareth. I think there's been a retirement. Yeah,
so unfortunately Nicky 995 retires in the pit lane, so possibly terminal damage from that contact with Sargent going into turn 1 and turn 2. It looks like after the incident that Sarge possibly got a little bit hot-headed and just tapped the rear end of Nicky going into turn 2 as a little bit of a revenge tap. We'll have to speak to the drivers in the media paddock after the race and find out what went on, but looked like Nicky slowed down to try and let Sargent pass later on, but he was refusing. He was just driving alongside the Force India driver, remonstrating with him from the cockpit. So two drivers you might have to hold away from each other come the post-race interviews. So
no, absolutely, and I sympathise with Sargent, because it does happen. You'll have somebody throw it at the inside, give you bad treatment, bit of disrespect, and you see a little bit of red mist and you want to get back at him straight away. And I think he has a, they're all racers, and I think he has a right to feel a bit peeved, if he is, so to speak. But it's nice to see him still on track, currently running 5th.
Yeah, definitely Sargent out there looking to set possibly a fastest lap of the race and gain a little bit of happiness back from this weekend, which was looking increasingly strong for him, seeing as it looked like Speed Queen wasn't going to make the gap of stretching the race lead over him for ultimate victory, but potentially looking at gaining a little bit of morale back in that garage for Williams by picking up the fastest lap of the race with the rest of the guys out on the harder compounded tyre.
Yeah, absolutely. As you can see now, Gareth, it's opened up for Delanga, who's now in P3 after starting in P10. He could be getting a very well-deserved podium out of this race, the second pre-season race before the championship starts next week, which you can see here and every Monday night from 8 o'clock at Invictus Racing League. As Joel now starts to pull the gap back to Speed Queen, it's now gone down to 15.2. We're kind of sitting in his pit box at the moment, Gareth, aren't we? We're hoping Speed Queen pits so we can have an entertaining last few laps. Does it look like she could be pitting? I'd like to think so. Give her something to shout about come the end.
Absolutely. And looks like she may be. So it is. So this will definitely opens up the race for Joel.
Here we go. We could be having a fantastic finale. Grandstand finish. The Ferraris against the McLaren, old foes from the 80s, 90s and 2000s until McLaren messed it up. But here we go. Let's have a look at this stop. Ultra softs go on.
Joel crosses the start-finish line now. He's going round the first corner, so Joel is going to have a lead of around 2 or 3 seconds on Speed Queen entering the second DRS zone into turn 2. So it's 3.1 seconds between the two of them at the moment, so game on for the next 5 laps.
Absolutely. Stay with us, ladies and gentlemen, for the next 10-15 minutes. Take that remote back from the wife. EastEnders is not going on tonight. Let's sit back and enjoy these last 5 laps.
One person we haven't mentioned too much because we've been watching the battle at top is SJD, the tier 2 driver, who is sitting in 4th position at the moment. So SJD doing very well to keep that Renault on the circuit, out of the walls. So a credit to SJD there.
He was manager.
I like to make sure the Renault team are represented.
Yeah, one of your drivers.
Of course, you can find me driving in a Renault on Wednesday nights in F3, so make sure you tune into our race streams on Tuesdays for the Performance League, Performance 1 and 2, and then on Wednesday for F1, F2 and F3, where you will find Tom and myself racing on the track surface against each other, once again here in Baku on Wednesday night at 8 PM, live on twitch.tv.
I don't think I'll be racing if last week's anything to go by.
There's definitely definitely controversy in Austria last week in S3.
Yeah, there certainly was. The Dakar in the qualifying, and it went south quicker than a lump of lead through water.
Wonderful analogy there. As Speed Queen now drops within 3 seconds of Joel, so not making up too much time. It's dropped down to 2.7 seconds heading into turn 2, so she's made around 0.4 of a second on Joel over that lap, but she's going to need to make more of that count over the next 2 laps if she's going to make an attack over the final 4 laps of the race.
I'm going to say, I'll say it now, when damned if I do, damned if I don't, but Speed Queen's use of the ERS for this race has been lackluster, to say it the best. I mean, you do expect a lot of the better drivers, and I've probably been a bit overcritical there, but currently, let's see, it's in level 5 again, and it's not even 10% yet. And, you know, you want to charge and have an attack, and could still come away with the race win, but it's been a recurring theme this race, behind Sargent as well, where he could have charged and had a push later. And, you know, I know it's obviously a better race than me, and you know, I'd like to think over the years I've gained a bit of experience, and you know, I do have an opinion, and I'm going to voice it. But it definitely needs to be, if we're going to have the fights and the battles that we want at the front, it needs to be a little bit more clued up on the use of the RSs. You know, see, as you look at Joel, Joel's got it right. He's charging now. He's up to 40%. He's got enough to see him over 1 lap, and then to be able to recharge it again. But when you look at like Speed Queens, it's gone.
Yeah, Speed Queen running on empty. They see the battery fully empty, not even halfway down the straight. And although she did make up almost a second and a half on Joel over that lap, that final part of the straight past the pit lane, and she lost around half a second purely on the fact that she just had no battery left, whereas Joel was able to just use that little bit of squirt of extra hybrid energy just to make sure that he kept the McLaren driver in check behind him.
Oh, your boy's got a 5 seconds top go apparently.
He's fine. He's doing great. As Sargent set the fastest lap time of 1:40.5.
It was tactical. You know, it's pre-season for the pit crew as well. So.
It makes sure the pit crew are all ready. We want to get him as ready for Melbourne next week. Get him in training. They don't get as many pit stops around the surface, and he goes out on the ultra soft tyres.
I'm so glad that happened, because it takes away the point that I made so foolishly about Speed Queen's lack of ERS use, and then you go and say she takes 1.5 seconds out. I do apologise.
She clearly knows what she's doing compared to what we're talking about.
Yeah. Oh, compared to what I'm doing, I didn't even get a lap in last week. Here we go on lap 23. The gap is now below a second. Can Speed Queen attack this lap? Are we going to get a Nicky Bomb into turn 1? Is a Nicky Bomb on the cards?
Speed Queen, she's just about with 2% battery at the moment, running out of battery down the straight.
That's about the gap that Nicky dive bombed from, so don't worry about that.
So it's far. So unfortunately, Speedqueen can't get the move done going into turn one. She needs to make sure this lap she's got the time. She's still got 3 laps or 2 and a bit laps left remaining to get the move done. So save up a little bit of battery, put it into low through the castle section, and then use it down that main straight. You don't want to be using it too early on in the lap, as there's just not the chance to overtake. So save it up from now on until you get towards the 3rd sector, and then really just absolutely go gung-ho against Joel, who's going to be defending vociferously from the front. He does not want to give up this lead. We're so close to the end of the race.
I want you on my team at Scrabble, I'll tell you that. Specifically, that's a good word, isn't it?
It's a great one.
Anyway, lap 24 of 26. One of these two, if one of them has the patience, the use of VRS has been very undervalued this race. And let's have a look now. Joel seems to have got the bit between his teeth, as you will. Caps down to 3 tenths, 4 tenths. We could be seeing the lead change at the end of the straight. Let's have a look now. There's going to be a drag race into turn 1 between the Ferrari and the McLaren. I wonder if I wonder if Speed Queen has a rocket on the back of it. Let's have a look now.
She's right alongside the Ferrari going down before we even get to the pit lane. She's going to be alongside, but it looks like you can see she just doesn't have the battery power to get past. Joel's got that extra bit of charge that he's using. Speedqueen once again running on empty. She can't get the move done. She's going to have to go around the outside of turn 1. She doesn't. They're still side by side going down into turn 2. Joel's going to get the inside. He should maintain the position, and he does, but how does Speedqueen's run come out? She gets a slightly better run coming out. She ran the outside line, so she's going to go around the outside going into turn 3. It looks like she's got the move done. She has. Oh, it's contact.
No. Oh no.
Oh, it's such a shame there.
Absolutely, Joel should have at least given a little bit more room. They could have still gone side by side down the straight. It's always controversial and sometimes silly when the drivers are side by side down the straight and they still somehow manage to make contact. Commiserations to Speed Queen, who inevitably would have won this race, but we see now Joel looks the odds-on favourite to take the win. Yeah,
it would be interesting to see if Joel slows down possibly towards the end of the lap and looks to... He is going quite slowly through the castle section, so possibly letting Speed Queen catch up and they can re-engage in battle heading on to the final lap of the race. So, yeah, really unfortunate there for Joel, who was on the inside, and it looked like he was just trying to tuck into the slipstream on Speed Queen down the straight into turn 3 and just tipped the rear end of that McLaren. Unfortunately for Speed Queen, she didn't pick up terminal damage hitting the wall. It looked like she pretty nicely controlled the spin and just got that 360, got back on the power, and she's still sitting in 2nd position.
It's a shame though that with so many cars we're driving, the action has been quite sparse. It's possibly the fact it's a no assist race and it's on a street circuit. Questions to be raised going next season's pre-season, yeah. As Joel nearly clips the wall again, which is a bit reminiscent of Mexico. Monaco 96, would you agree, Gareth? Nobody wants to win.
Absolutely. Make sure that we just lose as many people as possible. It's just a race of attrition around here at the moment, as it seems we've lost, as you can see, a lot of drivers. Only 5 finishers at the moment are going to finish across the line at the end of this race, and that's holding my breath at the moment. Not to say that anything doesn't happen over the final lap. As Joel's...
I mean, it's one of those races where if Sargent or DeLange across the line in P1, it wouldn't surprise you the way this race has gone.
Absolutely, and of course you with the castle section still was Joel really close to the wall there, so Joel really pushing it on his final lap, as it looks like Speed Queen might be settling for 2nd position. The Ferrari driver possibly having a few words with the Renault team afterwards, just to find out what happened heading down into turn 3. So possibly a meeting with Charlie Whiting and the rest of the stewards after the race for the Ferrari team.
No questions this week, Gareth? No Ash50? No?
Unfortunately not. We haven't had anything tonight. I'm sure we'll get the hashtag going on Twitter afterwards. But how would you...
Here we go. Joe across the line and wins the no assist Baku pre-season race. He'll have the momentum and the confidence going into next week's opener at Australia. Speed Queen taking home a very strong second place, and what a drive from De Lange. For me, possibly driver of the day. He's kept his car out of problems. He's kept himself to himself, and he takes home a well-deserved podium to show everybody in his home country and make them all very happy.
Yeah, and that's 7 places gained for De Lange there to finish in 3rd. So started in 10th position after retiring in qualifying. So from 10th to 3rd, so great result there for the Toro Rosso driver. And it's going to be Sergeant 009 who's going to come across the line. It looked like he may have possibly run out of fuel as we cross the line, because the Renault SJD really, really close behind, and possibly Sergeant looks
JD involved.
So it looks like Sergeant picks up 5th position. So what was your assessment of that race have gone, Tom? How did you find what was the racecraft like for the guys? Were there any flashpoints you feel need to be gone over in the post race community?
Do you know, to be honest, they're optimistic.
I want your honest opinion as a strategist and fellow racer.
I'll be honest, when you've got a group of racers who are new to no assist, putting them on a street circuit, it's bound to have a couple of DNFs. It's a shame, really. I hope it hasn't knocked the confidence, because, you know, Australia has a couple of walls as well, not as many as this. So I hope people don't take that lightly. Hope they still go for it. On the whole, the race they had its moments. It was a shame that we only ended up with 5 finishes. I was hoping that Scopefielder could have got round, because at one point in the race, so we had Scopefielder, Sargent, Nicky, Joel, and Speed Queen all battling at the front. But no, it was a comfortable race, and I'm sure the finishers will take that confidence into next week's opener at Australia.
Yeah, absolutely. I think definitely the moment of the race was the incident between Nicky 9095 and Sargent. So definitely a talking point in the paddock, and I'm sure all the journalists will be wanting to speak to both drivers and find out their opinion on how they think that collision went between the four-cylinder and the Williams.
Yeah, it was a shame, really. At this level, especially it being pre-season, I think Sargent would have a right to feel wronged by that, but I'm sure Nicky will apologise for that, and we'll move on, and we'll look forward to more cross racing as we finally get underway next week in Australia.
Absolutely, and with the league heading down south and down under to Australia next week, of course we were looking to have a full grid with a lot of drivers joining us after missing out tonight. We've got a lot of the Tier 2 drivers that will be back on the grid next week in Albion Park in Melbourne for that race. But if you are going to be following the season, make sure that you follow this stream on twitch.tv, follow the Invictus No Assist League channel, and of course we will be streaming tomorrow night for the Performance League, and then once again Wednesday night for F1, F2 and F3. So make sure that you're catching up with all your favourite drivers on track. And if you'd like to see anything more about the leagues, we do have our website at invictusracingleagues.com, where you can sign up yourself to be involved with the league. And for all updates, feel free to go to our Twitter page at InvictusRL, where we'll be giving away all of our announcements about what's going on with the leagues and then your eventual winners of the races.
I tell you what, you'd be really good at reading terms and conditions on the radio.
So for tonight, I'd like to say thank you, Tom, for joining me. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you, Gareth, as always.
And to everyone else, we will see you hopefully tomorrow night, hopefully for Wednesday night, but definitely next Monday. Good night.
Good night.